Hello, my name is Simon Miller from What Culture Wrestling, and you are listening to the PodMania Pro Wrestling Podcast, and you better keep listening to it. Why? Here's why.
You're listening to the PodMania Pro Wrestling Podcast, a sample of the best pro wrestling podcasts we can produce on our tiny budget. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, CastBox, and all other podcast platforms. If it's wrestling you want, check out more of our great content at podmania.co.uk. Let's do this.
PodMania Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Good, and I'm joined once again by Chris and Garth. Chris, how are you, buddy?
You made me watch Collision in Korea.
And you, Garth?
All right.
Even despite the fact that I made you watch Collision in Korea, apparently.
In a minute, hang on.
Oh.
You okay there, buddy?
What's happening, man?
Yeah. Just pop in a cold one.
Oh, I see. What is your tipple of choice today?
Is that what they're calling it nowadays?
Hey. What's your tipple of choice, Chris? Garth?
It is Coors Light.
Coors Light. Wow.
Get the fuck off of this podcast.
I myself am on Stella Artois, because I apparently...
Refreshing beverage.
Am I the only one not drinking?
Aren't you the only Scottish one as well? This seems weird.
Yeah.
Like,
it's weird for me too.
Yeah, the Geordie and the Stokey are drinking, yet the guy from Scotland isn't drinking.
I mean, that's an offensive stereotype. And...
Ladies and gentlemen, we're procrastinating, as you can probably tell, because we really, really, really don't want to talk about this pay-per-view. Basically, we put out there on Twitter that the new theme for our retro pay-per-view this time was going to be out of our comfort zone. And I don't think you can get more out of your comfort zone than watching 190,000 people sitting in almost complete silence watching something that they don't understand because they're there upon fear of death. It's an
I don't know, I felt
interesting
pretty
show.
uncomfortable on the train last week.
Well, it's an interesting show, to say the least. Chris, what did you think, buddy?
Well, I don't know, I feel like I'd enjoy some of the matches on the show more if the crowd was a crowd and not like 190,000 people with a massive gun being pointed at them. Like, it's one of those shows where
like
the stories
Super
behind
Showdown,
it.
Isn't it?
Yeah. No, to be fair though, at least people got into it at Super Show. Like, I watched one of the Saudi shows. I watched Greatest Royal Rumble because there's a Rumble, and like the crowd got really into Triple H versus John Cena. So
It's not the first match.
yeah, it was the opening match.
Dead for the rest of it, but that first match.
Oh yeah, they were dead.
shit.
Yeah, but then the dude, that sumo wrestler turned up and we're like, oh, it's Yokozuna! And no, it's not Yokozuna.
There's that great story, isn't there, that the Saudi prince, who this was not, well, I think it was the Saudi prince, who wanted all this organised for them, gave a listing of all the wrestlers that he wanted to attend this. On that list, of course, was Yokozuna, who at that point had been dead for nearly 17 years. So clearly a diehard fan.
Wasn't the Ultimate Warrior also on there?
I believe the Warrior was on there. I think Savage was mentioned as well. So,
because to be fair, Ultimate Warriors and the Saudi government's views on LGBT people kind of match up.
Very similar, yes. That is true. That is true. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a weird show for literally all of the reasons, but mainly because it's a show where we're going to spend little time talking about the actual matches and more time on the background of this show. It was co-promoted between New Japan Pro Wrestling and obviously WCW. It was the first and at the moment the last ever wrestling show internationally to take place in North Korea, and you'll sort of see why as we go on. It took place over 2 days, on the 28th and the 29th of April 1995, and it was originally called, get this, Pyongyang International Sports and Culture Festival for Peace.
Oh, that was Inoki's tagline.
It was.
Wasn't this all like a big play by Inoki to get re-elected? Because he was in like Yakuza scandals and shit.
Yeah,
guns and stuff.
Yeah, this was all basically Inoki. I mean, to begin with, this was all Inoki's baby somewhat. He contacted Eric Bischoff to say, basically, I want to do this show, and it boiled down to the fact that Inoki had very, very bad press in Japan due to all these backhanded dealings, and he thought that a pay-per-view in North Korea, would somehow manage to boost his political numbers. And yeah, that's where the genesis for the Pyongyang International Sports and Culture Festival for Peace.
I thought you were going to say genocide.
Yeah, there's a lot of what we're going to say. I know me and Garth have listened to this. Chris, I never actually asked if you did.
I did. I listened to it on the way home from uni. Yeah. And to be fair, I already knew a lot of this, but like hearing it from an actual person's mouth. Bischoff does not like Meltzer though. So, oh well.
No, you listen to anyone out of Something to Wrestle, 83 Weeks, or What Happened When, and none of them like Meltzer because they'll just go, he wasn't there. How the fuck does he know? But
the thing is, half the time he seems to have known, and it's just getting under their skin.
Yes, I think that's what it is. I think it's more a case of how the fuck does he know? But you're right, Chris. Hearing all of this from Bischoff's mouth, you know, exactly what happened, exactly the feelings of going to that country, and that stark contrast to the United States. I mean, even before they went, okay, he felt so, like the entire thing, he wanted to go because he knew no one else wanted to go there. He wanted it to be this sort of more international recognition for WCW. And he saw it as only a good thing. He has admitted now, if he knew what he knew about North Korea now, before he went, he wouldn't have gone. But obviously, not a lot was... No, it was obviously known as not the greatest place, but certainly not to the extent that Eric Bischoff and the rest of the WCW roster would soon find out. Interesting to note as well, before we get into it, that Ric Flair wasn't the first choice to take on Antonio Inoki. Who was it, Garth?
The immortal one, Hulkster.
Hulk Hogan, who basically, upon hearing that Eric Bischoff wanted to take him to North Korea, apparently looked at him and went, yeah, I don't think I'm available for that, brother. So, well done, Hulk Hogan. Bischoff said...
He dodged a bullet by the sound of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's quite funny because Bischoff
how
actually
the North
says...
Koreans would react to Hogan.
Say again.
Imagine how the North Koreans would react to Hogan.
Probably in complete utter silence, so Chris.
He had like the Born and Raised in the USA theme song at this point because he's in WCW, so coming out to that in North Korea.
With his flag.
Yeah.
Proper rubbing their faces and yeah, we're so much better than you.
He wouldn't be able to go over because he'd be shot.
Well, to be honest, I'm amazed. I'm amazed this entire show went off relatively without a hitch. When you consider the animosity that North Korea housed towards the West, and especially the United States, even now, even then, because of their involvement in like South Korea and things like that, it's baffling that everything went off without a hitch. But, I mean, stuff was that bad that you couldn't get a flight from America to North Korea. They had to go to Japan and then get a military aircraft from Japan to North Korea. Just that alone is ridiculous.
And apparently he was like 40 years old from like the Korean War.
Yeah.
Without any permission from anybody.
Yeah, the big thing is to state that Eric Bischoff asked no one's permission. It's great because my kids do this. They'll do something and their rationale is, yeah, but if I ask, he'll say no. So I just won't ask and then he won't say no. And that's pretty much what Bischoff did here. He thought, if I don't inform anyone I'm going and obviously,
that's basically my niece's attitude towards kicking my brother.
I think it's everyone's attitude, like deep down. If I don't ask, people won't say no. So yeah, basically, the first thing Bischoff actually had to do, though, and he admits that this was a lot more difficult than he first thought it was going to be, was actually find wrestlers to go into North Korea. And yeah, apparently very few people actually wanted to go. Unsurprisingly, I think.
I mean, like, I'm not going to lie, Rob, if you asked me to go to somewhere even slightly inconvenient, I probably wouldn't. So, like, going to North Korea.
Doing a live episode of PodMania from North Korea.
Like, and you join us at PodMania at the Somme. It's just like, no.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't understand Bischoff's rationale because he explains it in the podcast, 83 Weeks. And he says, yeah, it was exposure for WCW. And it was like, yes, but it's from North Korea. Who the fuck?
CNN didn't even bother showing it.
No.
No, CNN would like no, because Ted Turner would probably get shit if people realised he was in any way affiliated.
Well, jumping ahead slightly now, North Korea at the time had 2 television channels. Both television channels only showed government propaganda. No one in this country at all knew what the fuck wrestling was.
Well, they know who Ricky Toshi is.
Yeah, apart from that. But they've got no way of knowing who they are. They've got no idea who Ric Flair is, yet he's wrestling Antonio Inoki. They've got no idea who these people are. Yet Bischoff seems to think that this is going to be fantastic exposure for his company. Even if, right, there was one North Korean in that 355,000 person attendance that turned up at the Mayday Stadium, one person thinks, do you know what? I quite like the cut of this WCW. How the fuck is he even going to watch it? Just mind-boggling.
To be fair, once you've went so long about food, you do start to hallucinate. So
true. I mean, this is horrendous. One of the things that Bischoff says once they land is that you go through the streets of Pyongyang and all the other places. Well, it was mainly Pyongyang, I think they stayed. I don't think they went outside there. But there was no...
No, it was just between, like, the airport and Pyongyang. Like, even now when tourists go to North Korea, they're sort of hustled into the city and not taken anywhere else because, you know, dead carcasses being eaten are sort of a corporate liability. So.
Yeah, it's not exactly greatest PR, is it? I mean, he does say there's no rats, there's no pigeons, there's no squirrels or anything, because if they were running about, they'd be caught.
Eat them all.
Yeah, exactly. It's edible. These people were starving. And apparently that was in the city. That was Pyongyang, which is the capital of North Korea and the richest city in North Korea. Outside of that, people apparently this was widespread at the time, and apparently it was covered quite well throughout international media, people were eating their own dead because they were that short on food. I can't even begin to fathom why these people who can't get food want to watch a 20-minute time limit draw between Shinya Hashimoto and Scott Norton.
They suffered enough.
Yeah, exactly.
They suffered enough.
Why the fuck would they want to spend 20 minutes watching Scott Norton stumble round the ring? It just seems like unnecessary torture. Anyway, sure enough, Bischoff manages to get together this sort of ragtag WCW crew, and basically they get to North Korea and it is horrendous, is how it's basically described. Just absolutely awful. They have their passports taken instantly. They are questioned extensively. They're given their own security and translators. They're made to do basically PR for the North Korean government. Another big thing to point out at the time, North Korea was in a massive state of mourning at this point because the first leader of North Korea, who'd ruled since basically the country's inception in 1948, King Il-sung. Let me try that again. Kim Il-sung. He was basically a god to
King
these people.
Il-sung.
He was basically a god to these people, and he just died, and the country was in massive mourning. So, like, there were statues up of him, and everyone was, in, horrible, horrible states of mourning. And again, Antonio Inoki thought, this is my time. Say again.
Because they were told to be in mourning.
Well, yeah, exactly. And
to be fair, this person is basically built up as like Jesus Christ without the Romans to fuck it all up. So,
well, as Ric Flair tells it in his book, and so does actually Scott Norton in his book as well, and they talk about how they're sort of rushed from place to place to place to place to place, and how a lot of it is visiting local landmarks and things like that. And on these landmarks, they'd be given this spiel about how, about certain things in history. And Bischoff tells a story about World War II. Did you hear this on the podcast?
Mm-hmm.
That basically one of the reasons that the North Koreans hated Americans so much was because during the war, they'd killed and murdered millions and millions of North Koreans, and the Japanese surrender, the famous Japanese surrender that was mainly down to the American army, apparently, according to North Korean people, was down to the North Korean army. And they were saying this to these Westerners, and they were just looking at them going, How can you possibly think this? But because they're pretty much, at this point, cut off from the outside world,
Oh yeah, it's like
how on earth would they know?
propaganda.
Absolutely. Again, from Bischoff, he says that the only colour in the city was propaganda posters for the government. You cannot imagine this sort living in this way, can you, at all? And yet...
Yeah, I didn't used to have to before you made us watch Collision in Korea.
And yet, Antonio Inoki thought North Korea should be the venue to put on an international sports and culture festival for peace.
You were acting like Antonio Inoki was ever a logical man.
I find it baffling. And I have found this pay-per-view to be an absolute drag, but the backstory of it just fascinating, mainly because of the juxtaposition between the Western world and how these people were living, because it is abhorrent. It's abhorrent that North Korea was living in this absolute strife when you've got South Korea, which at this point was relatively affluent, in comparison to North Korea. And it's just
that's sort of
baffling.
like saying off ham is more edible than a rock.
How is it? How is that the same thing?
Because, like, you can technically eat off ham, but you can't eat a rock.
What, the rock?
Well, Garth, if you want to eat the rock, that's completely up to you. He is a bit of a beefcake after all.
I don't know how to respond to that. Anyway. Right. Anyway, Meltzer reports the ticket prices for this show. And this stadium is enormous. 165,000 people reportedly turned up on the first night, with 190,000 people turning up on the second night, which of course is a grand total of 355,000 people. Meltzer reports that the ticket price is pretty much priced anybody in North Korea out of going. So the fact that there was a sellout sort of indicates that they were there by force, which I think everybody watching this show realised anyway. You either go or we're going to shoot you, I think was probably the message given to them. Am I right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but to be fair, that's how you get us to do this podcast, so...
Well, yeah, and know your fucking place, Chris.
Oh no, they're gonna take me. No, my dog, Chester.
Just one more story. Scott Norton apparently at this point during this entire tour was starting to, for all intents and purposes, lose his shit. Obviously, I think I would be the same, having had my passport taken off me, being herded into twos and herded into the back of cars to be put on basically this PR tour. They were put into the hotel, and he wanted to ring his wife, and somehow, bafflingly, he managed to get a call through North Korean operators to his wife in America.
You were going to collect call from North Korea. Will you accept the charges?
Absolutely fucking not. So his wife obviously picks up the phone. He then begins to spout off about how fucking terrible this country is, to which, obviously, it's North Korea. Government officials are monitoring all phone calls. So his phone call is cut off. Men arrive very, very quickly at Scott Norton's door. He's arrested, taken to the basement of the hotel, interrogated, and then taken to another hotel where basically he's kept under 24/7 surveillance.
I'm not going to lie. After seeing that Scott Norton Shinya Hashimoto match, I really wish they'd have shot him.
It's not a match that's going to live long in the PodMania memory, is it?
No, it is, because it's probably the worst non-Dormery match we reviewed.
The worst non-Dormery match. Brilliant.
It's the worst match Garth has been on, and he reviewed Impact for a year.
Hey, anything Impact is better than this shit.
I'm afraid I stand by Garth on that, yeah.
Yeah, no, even like the worst of TNA is better than this.
This wasn't shown on pay-per-view, obviously. As you've said, Garth, CNN refused to air it, which I think is quite funny, especially as the owner of CNN was Ted Turner, the owner of WCW, and they refused to air it. Eventually, it aired in North America on August 4th, 1995, under the package of Collision in Korea, and it was basically matches from both nights clumped together in a, and I'll put this in inverted commas, easily digestible 2-hour pay-per-view, with commentary provided by Eric Bischoff, Mike Tenay, and Ishikawa, who of course is Sonny Uno.
I've eaten Lego pieces that are more easily digested than this.
Honestly, the only thing less charismatic than the crowd was the commentary. Like,
they did it like 3 months after the event as well.
They did.
Yeah, so like there's no excitement at all.
There's no excitement. They do it in front of a green screen. Sonny Ono has absolutely no idea. I don't think he even knows what day it is, to be perfectly honest. He is on there apparently because obviously he's more familiar with the New Japan wrestlers, but Mike Tenay knows them anyway.
He knows them all. Mike Tenay was really fucking knowledgeable. Actually. He was. It's quite funny because it's not the worst thing Mike Tenay has ever had to work with. Have you heard him when he had to fucking commentate with Dusty?
No.
Mike, he was like Rey Mysterio, and he's like going through all these points about Rey Mysterio, and then Dusty's like, yeah, he's flippy.
I mean,
he likes do the flippy dippy things with a fruity booty.
Just makes up words most of the time, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. I miss Dusty.
I mean, for all the great things Dusty did for wrestling, commentary was not one of them.
To be fair, when you hear about it in like a non-commentary context, it's really funny. Like how Dean Ambrose got his name. It's like he went up to him, pitched the name to Dusty, and he was like, Dean, like James Dean. I like it. I loved it.
He just sounds like such a guy. He just sounds like such a lad, doesn't he?
Lad.
We'll break down these matches.
Really, we're just stalling, so we don't need to talk about.
We are, and is there anything else anyone wants to discuss regarding the backstory?
I was going to suggest, why don't we do weird bits of trivia about this as we go along, so we can break up the fucking matches.
Okay.
I did like the entrance music. It was very sort of upbeat, sort of Guitar Hero rock.
Please, you couldn't tell. Like, I only realised it was piped in after listening to the Bischoff one. Podcast, because the crowd was so silent, there wasn't any sort of audio discrepancy.
I was just gonna say, it's always nice to hear entrance music when the crowd is fucking dead, not literally. Obviously,
it's funny because like as a Japanese wrestling fan, you have to contend with people going, "Oh, but like the crowd's so dead," and I'm sort of like, you can't tell me the crowds in Tokyo Dome are dead because they make noise. There is no noise. Like the only noise you would possibly hear in this is a gunshot jamming in the darkness.
It's not great. Just a quick question. Right? If this was a show in the US, and you look at this card, and say it's promoted as a super card between New Japan and World Championship Wrestling, you wouldn't go to this.
No.
I mean,
to be fair, they might draw on the back of Flair and Inoki.
I mean, the state of this undercard is an absolute travesty. I mean, I know we joke about
to be fair, it's not bad on paper.
I mean, I know we joke about the IWGP Heavyweight Championship match and how it went 20 minutes, but that was comfortably the longest match by over 5 minutes. This went longer than Inoki versus Ric Flair. The thing that this entire thing was based upon, it went 5 minutes longer. I mean, I know Antonio Inoki and Ric Flair were both ancient at this time. I think Ric Flair was 47 at this point. I mean, to be fair, I can't remember a time when Ric Flair wasn't 47, but...
Garth probably can.
Same age, aren't they?
Woo!
It was Garth who gave him the name.
Are you currently suing for the rights of the man guy?
I was just going to say that.
Oh, that is the most ridiculous lawsuit. The most ridiculous lawsuit. Anyway, let's start at the very beginning. We open with Wild Pegasus defeating Too Cold Scorpio in singles action in 6 minutes and 22 seconds. And I hated this match for one reason, and that was because it gave me false hope. I watched this match and thought, do you know what? This isn't going to be the worst pay-per-view, because obviously it's Chris Benoit and Too Cold Scorpio, both very, very good workers. It was
otherwise known as Flash Funk.
Otherwise known as Flash Funk, both really good workers. The match came off as very flawless, no botches, very, very easy to watch. I think Meltzer gave this 4 stars. Really, really, really enjoyable match. The only thing that ruined it for me, really, was the fact that it went 6 minutes. This could have easily gone 12.
We didn't have time to sell.
Exactly, this could have gone 12 minutes.
To sell.
But yeah,
both men are really good. Too Cold Scorpio really needed to rethink his ring gear.
Yes, he did.
Like imagine if he walked out in like a Scottish crowd wearing the fucking St. George's flag, and then take that nuclear quite literally.
Nice.
And like
those holding up cards with nuclear missiles on them.
Oh, that is something we need to talk about, don't we? That is something we do need to talk about.
We'll have to. This felt like just an like a cruiserweight exhibition you'd see on like WCW Saturday Night or whatever, and it was fun enough. Like if this headlined like a TV nowadays, it wouldn't be out of place. Like both men are kind of ahead of their time. There's like no crazy bumps, which is quite nice. The tombstone is a tombstone counter, always fun. A crowd favorite when you're not in Korea. It was okay. I did quite enjoy it.
I enjoy it. I like the whole obviously like it started off with a test of strength, but then they carried it through to the pins, and then they're sort of trying to push each other at the mat and things like that. I thought that was really sort of good little spot.
Yeah, I mean, there was nothing not to enjoy about this match. Again, just I wish it had gone a little bit longer. And you're right, Chris, because Eric Bischoff says, they were always on the scout for talent, because obviously this was when the WCW brand was starting to push these cruiserweights, and obviously Chris Benoit would go on to become a member of the WCW roster, and quite a prominent one as well.
He killed it. Oh, that's bad phrasing.
How long have you been waiting to make that joke?
I'm not going to lie, I wanted to make it in No Mercy, but I really also wanted to get across how good that match was, so I did.
I would give this 7 stars. I would give it 8, but I don't think it went long enough to give it 8.
I give it 6. I don't think any match below 10 minutes can really make a play for 7, really. Like, it would need to be exceptional, and like this was the sort of good, solid. Like I would agree with you if it went 12 or something, but not at the length it was. It's all down to Garth now.
Okay, I went 6. I don't think there's anything on this card that went higher.
Fair enough. I think
bastard.
you gave it 7 out of. I think you gave it 7 out of expectation.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think I looked at it next to the rest of this card and then thought this was probably the best match.
To be fair, this isn't the best match on the card for me. It's third, believe it or not.
I bet I can guess what your top match was. Can I have a wild guess now?
Sure.
Because you are a huge smark. I mean, you admit that. Admit that.
I can't not, like, I mean, I'm wearing a Kid Lycos shirt right now, so...
Doing a podcast about wrestling?
Yeah.
You're just... right, okay. Exactly.
My favourite match I've seen live is at a Progress show.
Exactly, and we've watched an obscure pay-per-view from North fucking Korea. I bet it was the Joshi match.
It actually wasn't.
Really?
Wow. Yeah. But we'll get into that later.
Was it the Steiner brothers?
Yeah, yes, it was.
Yeah, I just liked the Steiner brothers. Anyway, so that was match 1. Really good match. Again, filled me with false hope. To be perfectly honest, the second match, where Yuji Nagata defeated, all right, let me get this right, Tokumitsu Ishizawa. I hope I've got that right. He's a former IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion, and obviously Yuji Nagata will go on to be the IWGP Heavyweight Champion. This went 4 minutes and 28 seconds, and again, this was very seamless. A lot of mat wrestling, a lot of strong style.
It was even
work.
line match.
Yeah, I thought it was worked very, very well. It's the match we see 100 times on New Japan shows. Yeah, like you said, Chris, with the Young Lions. We've seen Ren Narita and Shota Umino do this match 4 or 5 times this year, but it was still a nice pace. It was a good match to watch. Again, just went too short. Chris?
Yeah, it's quite weird seeing Nagata in this sort of... It's basically baby Nagata. Like, I get he could still kick my ass, but I was watching this thinking it's quite adorable. Because now I'm just used to him being like a prune who can slap you really hard. But
what a fantastic way of describing Nagata.
I can't... Like, there's nothing really of note in this match. Like, it's a passable Young Lion match, but, like, it's not anything, really.
No, there's nothing that instantly stands out as, holy shit, that move. But it was a really, really...
Because it's a Young Lion match, they can't do that.
No, it was a solid match. I will admit, though, it's quite funny seeing Yuji Nagata, or Nagata, depending on how you say it. I do find it interesting that here he is a junior, and having just come off a match with Jushin Thunder Liger, and obviously... Now he is seen as, one of the heavyweights and, a dad of New Japan. I just find it really weird that,
A daddy.
Yeah, a daddy. Garth, what did you think?
I mean, I enjoyed it. It was all right for what it was. The problem is that the copy I was watching was so shit. It was hard to tell the difference because they both had exactly the same ring gear on.
That's racist.
That is quite racist.
That's really racist, Garth.
It's people like you who called Brexit, Garth.
It is. Do you know what, Garth? Fuck this. I'm stopping the podcast, prick. Oh, God. Sorry, please continue, Garth.
I think Garth hates it now.
The quality of the match I was watching was so shit. Like I say, it was like really like bitty. Like really fucking pixelated. And honestly, like at times I was like, which one, like, I had to look at like the body weight, like the body sizes.
That was the only.
To be completely fair, he hasn't seen as many Nagata matches as us because once you know Nagata, he had a pretty distinct nose.
He has, but I will stick up for Garth here and say they were wearing the exact same ring gear, which didn't help.
Yeah, because they're fucking
young lions. I know.
I literally couldn't see their faces most of the time, unless it was like the close-ups. When they were like doing the mat stuff. Yeah. When it was like the long shots, it was really fucking hard to other than like I said, the body type. But when they were moving, it was such a shit fucking quality. It was so hard to watch.
It was.
It was good. I enjoyed it. It was all right. It was. But this was the worst match for that. For the long shots. They kept using like the hard cam all the time. This one and the first tag match,
The hard cam wasn't even like centered for some reason. It was like
a
slightly
very weird angle. Very weird.
Like I say, like I enjoyed it, but like I couldn't, because I don't know the people as well, and the commentary was so bad. Like
the commentary's off.
I don't even know if the commentary that I was watching on the stream that I had was like behind slightly, because it kept calling moves like after the fact they'd done them, like well after the fact, and it was just really confusing.
But like commentary sort of felt like all three of them had different roles, but we didn't sort of sync. So like Tenay was there to get over how important things are, to get over the story. Bischoff's there to basically sell it, and then Sonny Uno's there to make me want to fucking die.
I was gonna say, he just pipes up every 10-15 minutes
with something stupid and like some fucking just, oh yeah, the Japanese are better. Yes, Umino, we're three smarts on the internet watching this. We fucking get it. Fuck off.
Like, as far as the match goes, like it should have went longer, because they didn't really have time to do anything with it.
To be fair, that's the same. They don't let them go long. They basically just go out, do what they've learned, and then go back. So,
but it was fine. It was fine.
Yeah, the commentary was an issue in the Joshi match as well, when Bull Nakano hits the leg drop for the win, and the commentary team and the camera are both behind. So the camera's pointing at something else, so we miss the move to start off with, and then the commentary team are behind as well. So whether that's because they're watching the same stream as we are and they can't see it, or...
You know what the worst thing with commentary was? They called a fucking moonsault a finishing hold.
Their lack of chemistry was terrible.
This match is the point where I turned it off and I had to go and find a different version. And I know where I found the best version was through that podcast. They had a link to it.
Really?
And it was in the fucking podcast. Yeah.
I watched it on YouTube.
Same here.
I did, but the one that I found was like in parts, and it was so shit.
Oh man, I wish you'd have said that. I just sent you the link we watched.
We just put in Collision and Career, like the top result.
It's the top result, yeah. What were you
watching? The one that I found was it was in like 4 parts.
Did you just assume it wasn't on YouTube and went to... We talked about it being on YouTube in the chat.
I just Googled it and it was the first one that came up. I think it was on like Daily Motion on Vimeo or something.
Oh, no. See, you've made a terrible mistake. Terrible mistake.
But then I found a good version through the podcast.
It's weird because Garth is normally the most technologically... I was about to say inept, but that's the opposite of what I'm trying to say.
Adept.
Not inept.
Adept.
There we go. Out of the 3 of us.
I know, but it was like I was just frantically trying to find it because I hadn't watched it.
And how glad are you that you've watched it now?
I'm so glad I didn't go to bed till like midnight last night.
You can tell people now you are one of those smarks that has sought out Collision in Korea to watch. Anyway, I'd give it 5.
Yep, 5.
Yeah, I get like literally. It's the definition of a 5. Just like nothing flashy,
solid, nothing flashy.
Botched.
So
I wasn't bored.
I just want to quickly at this point, before we go into match 3, stalling for the fact that I can't remember a single thing that happened in match 3. I think we need to bring up these cards, and basically they were treating this like some kind of Olympic opening ceremony, and they had these cards that the crowd would hold up, and obviously the way they moved them made it look like a moving picture, and they were incredible and really, really good to look at.
Is this what you lads did before GIFs existed?
Yeah, pretty much, mate. This is what we used to do at the cinema. We just had to employ people to move the pictures for us using cards. Very, very, very missed art, to be perfectly honest. It's like barrel making. Doesn't really happen anymore. So they had these big, enormous pictures going around the stadium, and they looked incredible. Until one of them very, very clearly depicted a nuclear missile being fired from North Korea and over the United States of America. They made that abundantly clear. Now, I must say,
It's an edited show. Why did they put it in?
Baffles me, Chris. I've got no idea, because Bischoff spoke about that before I watched the show, and I was like, well, that's not going to be in, and then watched as this missile flew from North Korea over the United States. I was like, the fuck is this?
Why would you come to our show just to boo us?
Well, there's that wonderful anecdote where Eric Bischoff is in the back of his car, in the back of this car that's taking them places, and the translator slash like CIA woman, North Korean secret police, whatever you want to call her, turned round and said to, I think it was it him and Sonny Ono he was with, or was he with?
Yeah, no, it was with Sonny Ono, because that's his partner, and it's just like, don't you dare rape our women.
That's right. No, it wasn't. Don't you dare. It was just deadpan. While you are here, you must not rape our women. Because that's what they thought.
Thing is, the implication in that statement is, like, do all the raping you want once you leave here. That's none of our concern. Just don't rape our women.
Just don't rape our women, okay? What you do on your own time.
Women.
It's just absolutely, yeah. I can't get my head around it. I genuinely can't.
I really hope I didn't get taken out of context in the future.
Well,
just
anyway.
a video clip of us saying, "Don't rape our women."
Moving on to match 3, tag team match between Masahiro Chono and Hiro Saito, defeating El Samurai and Tada Yasuda in 8 minutes and 6 seconds. This match was incredibly dull.
It was so dull. I was so disappointed.
You look at the talent in this match: Saito, Chono, El Samurai even. And this was boring.
It was just ground and hold for long periods.
Was this before or after Chono's injury? Like, where he broke his neck? 95. It must be after. And no, because 95 Austin being ECW by now, so yeah, this would be after.
I just don't understand how in an 8 minutes match you've got enough time to put the amount of rest holds that these 4 men put on. Just
a young
ridiculous.
Randy Orton watches it. A young Randy Orton watches it and takes notes.
Rest hold. RKO. Yeah, very, very boring. Very, very. Not even. I can't even say by the numbers, because I wonder with a couple of these matches if, I mean, you go out and perform in front of 190,000 people, because obviously these matches were from night 1 and night 2. But even so, 165,000 on the lower drawing night. You're performing in front of this, but it must be such a bizarre experience, a slightly otherworldly, to perform in front of that amount of people and to have no reaction to anything you do.
It must be like wrestling in the Eye of a Storm.
Almost, yeah. Like, you know that there are people there, but you can't hear them. And, like, they were silent throughout this show. It was almost like there wasn't anyone there. There were Impact shows with more chants than this.
Yeah, because the Impact shows paid them to chant.
True story. But honestly, this match was... I don't remember anything, and that's not because I didn't make notes. There was nothing to make notes on. I mean, it's a 3-star match.
I just put no butches, but it kind of bored me.
I mean, surely that's the definition of 3 stars.
I gave it 4 because I don't want to give Chono 3, but I kind of have to agree with you.
Garth?
Yeah, I'll go 3. It was just...
I'm really annoyed that this is Garth's introduction to Harvey's people.
I'll tell you what, next time we do a more retro pay-per-view, we'll give him a decent Chono show.
Or decent fucking anyone on this fucking card.
One that is without Scott Norton, I think, is very, very pivotal to his enjoyment of the show.
Or fucking 90s New Japan's out there.
Yes, exactly. So we then move on to the Joshi Tag Team match, which is one of the better matches of the night between Bull Nakano and Akira Hokuto, defeating Manama Toyota and Mariko Yoshida in 8 minutes and 34 seconds. Good match, very good match, though slightly stinted by the fact that Eric Bischoff and Mike Tenay spent more time talking about Bull Nakano's hair.
To be fair, imagine how, like, North Korea, like, I know Bischoff said it, but, like, as dictatorships have a way of how people have to look, and then fucking Bull Nakano comes out. Like, it must look, like, imagine if, like, the Sugar Puffs monster walked into class one day. That's basically what happened here.
Jesus Christ. Is the Sugar Puffs monster even still a thing?
I hope so. I hope he's not dead. 2016.
Right. Didn't mean dead. Just meant, is he still an advertising thing? That's what I meant.
I don't think we're not allowed to advertise Sugar Puffs anymore.
That's because they're...
You're not allowed to advertise. We are pretty shit, to be fair. To be fair, but my family can never afford Sugar Puffs, so we got little home brand Sugar Puff, which is even worse.
Sugar Puffies. Sugar spelled S-U-G-A.
It's Scotland, so it's just Sugar Puffs.
Sugar Poofs. Chris, what did you think of this match?
I really enjoyed this. This is the one thing where I was watching and going, Garth is going to hate these people because this was objectively really good. Toyota is amazing, so is Bull Nakano, so is just all of them. Like, honestly, this could have been the main event of, like, 205 Live, and people will go, yeah, but 205 Live was real fucking good this week. Like, the fact that this is these women performing on sort of, like, in a weird environment sort of shows you how good they are. And I think Tenay did a great job of putting over how exclusive it is to be among the organization they were in, which I thought was really good. And I love them all. Toyota is just one of the best.
Garth?
I really enjoyed it, yeah. Probably my second favourite on the card.
Yeah.
It was just in light of what's to come and most of what came before it, these people actually seem to sort of put some thought into the match, and there was some story to it, and there was, I don't know, it was just it was an actually fun, well sort of flowed match. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
It's weird that in this retro thing we're doing that Bull Nakano probably has one of the higher averages.
Yeah, true. It's the second Bull Nakano match we've reviewed. What makes me... I think I agree with you, Garth. I think this match had a lot more thought put into it, but it also seems like this was probably, bar the first match, was probably the only match where there seemed to be palpable chemistry between the competitors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they probably were wrestling all the fucking time.
Well,
so.
Yeah, because they were all part of All Japan Women. But I thought it was ironic, really, that aside from probably this match and the Wild Pegasus 2 Cold Scorpio match, there was no chemistry, and that was reflected in the commentary, because there was fucking no chemistry there at all, and yeah, just ridiculous. But this match, decent, fast-paced, hard-hitting. And when Bull Nakano came off the top rope for a leg drop, I enjoyed it. I think this was another set. I think this was 7.
I'd give it a 7. I really, really enjoyed it. Like, I kind of want to do Big Egg for Wrestling Universe, but I know that's never going to happen, so I'm just happy we managed to get Toyota on one of these shows.
Garth?
Yeah, I'll go 7. It's good, yeah.
Sweet. We then move on to, in my mind, this was the main event. Whatever followed this had a lot to live up to, because... And I would quite like to read the messages that Garth sent to the group whilst watching this match. Because he was not a happy bunny when he realised he'd wasted 20 minutes of his life watching a 20... Oh, here we go. Right, so... His first match was Fuck This Norton v Japanese Greg Valentine. It's awful. So at this point, you can tell how annoyed Garth is because he's calling Hashimoto Japanese Greg Valentine. Then...
Just as a quick thing, how much did you know about Hashimoto before this show?
Doesn't matter.
Hang
on. 8 minutes later, we then had another message saying, this is so slow. And then a very, very angry message. A fucking draw? What a load of shite. Just very, very angry Garth. Yes, this was the IWGP Heavyweight Championship match where Hashimoto retains, having fought Scott Norton to...
This wasn't even a title match, was it?
Yeah, it was. It was for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. It was the longest feeling 20-minute time limit. Like, I'm not joking. Omega Okada went an hour, and this felt longer. Like,
God, it was shit.
Good grief. And if you think about it, right, this is the same sort of time. In fact, it's later, obviously, than Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels doing an hour. And that literally was an hour with no pinfalls. So...
Yep.
I don't understand. I mean, I know Scott Norton has never been blessed with good working capabilities, and he was probably terrified that he was still under 24-hour surveillance for ringing his wife and slagging off North Korea. But that is no excuse for producing this slow, lethargic... It was like they were wrestling in quicksand. It was the most boring, plodding... It wasn't even strong style. You can't even put it away by saying, yeah, but you won't see the beating they took. It was just... dull.
The fact that I didn't even bother trying to... and when Garth started going off on it, I only said one thing, trying to defend Hashimoto, and I'm like, nah, I can't defend this match.
There's no way of defending this match, Chris. There's nothing in 20 minutes. I mean, we said about the Nagata-Ishizawa match, that was 4.5 minutes, and we said there wasn't a lot to talk about only because it was 4.5 minutes. There was more to talk about in that 4.5 minutes than there was in this entire 20-minute time limit draw, Garth.
It was just...
I got so bored during this match that I didn't even take notes on the match. I just started...
That's the thing, I don't have any notes for it because there was nothing of note. Like,
I knew it was going to a draw, so I just made a list of things I'd rather be doing. I'd rather be doing for 20 minutes.
Like Norton got up on the rope once and then missed. Like, really shit.
I got to the end of this and I just said I'd rather be stuck in the lift with my ex for 20 minutes than watch this.
There are a lot of things I'd rather be doing, but this, yeah, not memorable. Certainly not an IWGP Championship defense that lives long in the memory. It was worse than the tag team match. It went longer than the tag team match. It had a result that benefited no one. It had no heat. Obviously, it suffered the same as every other match with the lack of crowd involvement. The commentary team couldn't get it over. It's got to be 2 stars for me.
I gave it 2 as well. And I'm not, literally only got 2 because I respect Hashimoto too much to give him a 1.
I'll go with that. It's a shite.
Yeah, absolutely shite. And following this, we then had a squash match. Yes, some people had turned up on this show to be squashed. Yasuda had turned up to North Korea, braved being shot at, braved being basically part of this horrible dictatorship, and he was squashed in 2 minutes and 21 seconds by a very, very uncooperative Road Warrior Hawk.
He was in the tag match earlier. So.
Even so.
Yeah, to be fair, the only note I have here is, can Hawk even sell?
There was no chance Hawk was selling any offense.
Because that's the thing, the Road Warriors are dead. Like, I love them, but really cunty in the ring. It's just like, tell you what, make us sell for you, basically.
We will sell for you, but prove to me that it's worth my time. Go on.
I know, like, I had an easier time getting my niece to eat a broccoli.
Hey, broccoli's decent. I'm not talking about broccoli. No, right. That is how little I've enjoyed this show. I would rather talk about fucking broccoli. Yeah.
I used to think broccoli was mini trees, and I was scared to eat it in case I got wood in my mouth.
God, what do you think about this match, man? All 2 minutes and 21 seconds of it.
It was just fucking typical Hawk thing. He wasn't going to sell, and at that point, where was it? like a tiger suplex or something. He just fucking jumped straight up and clotheslined him. It's like, oh,
No, exactly.
I know where this is going.
It was at that point.
It's sort of like not even in like an like the biggest promotion in Japan at this point was based around like no selling at the correct time. Hawk just no sold for the sake of it.
It was at that point that
Like
the
this
shooter
isn't a
realised
Kenta Kobashi fighting spirit.
it was ridiculous. But I'd still give it more than the previous match. I think it was 3 stars.
I was at least laughing in this match. I was like, "Oh, Hawk, you fucking scamp."
There was a tiger suplex that instantly gives it 1 more mark.
Yeah.
Everyone agree 3 stars?
Yeah.
How
3 stars,
depressing
yeah.
is that a 2-minute squash match got a higher grade than an IWGP Heavyweight Championship defense? The fucking state of this show. Right. We then move on to some decent wrestling, and you can always count on the Steiner brothers as a tag team to produce decent wrestling. It's the Steiner brothers defeating Hiroshi Hase and Kensuke Sasaki in 11 minutes and 51 seconds. I'm going to go over to Chris because I know he's dying to mark out over this match.
Oh, it was just 4 big men knocking lumps at each other, and I'm a Japanese wrestling fan, so yes, I quite enjoyed it. I love, like, it's amazing. You forget how athletic the fucking Steiners were, especially when you see Scott later, like, not 5 years after this.
Yeah.
Like, the state he was in, and the hero is basically fucking Kurt Angle. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, there was a catching belly-to-belly suplex from an axe handle. I'm like, whoa, fucking, what year is this? This is not, like, the feeling I got from this match was, I wish this match was on any other show so I could have more fun watching it. Like, because I think the crowd really deflated this match for me.
Garth?
Because,
Oh, sorry. I thought you'd finished, Chris.
well, no, it's 2 things. First of all, because Antonio Inoki definitely liked the Japanese and said it was a note to the North Koreans and said this was all a shit. That's something he definitely did, as much as Bischoff wants to deny it.
Garth, what did you think?
Antonio Inoki.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was excellent. Just it's been so long since I've seen like the Steiner brothers match that I did genuinely forget what a good team they were and how good Scott fucking Steiner used to be. Before,
You don't really know me most in this match, though. They missed the finish again.
Yeah, I love the bit where Scott Steiner picked up who was it? He picked up and just chucked him out of the ring, and he didn't even look to see if there was anyone there to catch him. He just fucking chucked him.
It's like,
Was that good, or was it just being horrendously dangerous?
You can just tell Scott Steiner's like such an asshole.
Yeah.
Well, there's that story that Bischoff tells about when they went to the banquet, and it was like all this food that they would like chicken and all this, and he took a bite of it and he just fucking spat it out. He's like, "What's this disgusting shit?"
and he chucked it on the ground like he's fucking
Like so
poor.
disrespectful.
Again, we said at the start of the podcast that some North Korean people were forced to eat their own dead because they got no food, yet Scott Steiner is provided with a banquet, stamps on their food in the middle of a restaurant.
I can only imagine, like, if a worker was there, it's like, we fucking ate Grandad and he's doing this shit.
Exactly. Just absolutely, just a... And
Like,
apparently...
he can complain about that, but Grandad was really fatty.
I mean...
Nana was much better.
They had to take Scott Steiner away and teach him the rules of etiquette. I was like, that's amazing.
And I just have an image of Steiner in like an etiquette class. It's like, okay, so this is how you drink the tea. Fuck this bullshit.
No, we've been through this, Scott.
Statistically speaking,
You're in England. You say none of this tripe, not fuck this bullshit.
I enjoy this match. I think it was at least joint best match on the card. The Steiner brothers never ever failed to deliver, like I said. Just a really, really, really good tag team. I thought Hase and Sasaki were really good as well. Sasaki, even not Sasaki. I'd give it 7.
Yep.
I also gave it a 7. It might have been an 8 if they'd have shown us the Steiner screwdriver, but they didn't.
It was close to an 8, but I'll go 7. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it quite touched an 8. When you look at the matches that we've given 8 in the past, I don't feel it's quite on that level. But I think the lack of talent or lack of ability or lack of just the lack of a decent match on this card sort of made this stand out a bit more. So I'd give it 7. We then move on to the marquee match. Antonio Inoki defeating Ric Flair in 14 minutes and 52 seconds. Didn't wrestle on the first night, Ric Flair, and then on the second night did the job to Inoki, a person who famously was not a wrestler at this time, but was a politician. What did we think of the match?
It doesn't stop Inoki going over.
No, what did we think of the match? What did we think of the result? Garth, start with you.
It was just two retired wrestlers at that point coming back, and they just both looked quite rusty and just quite dull. Again, it was all right. There was a couple of decent spots, and they tried to get the crowd going at one point, and they just have none of it. But it was all right. It was the marquee match. Yeah, it was what it was. At this point, I was just sort of thinking, let's just get this over with.
That's the spirit. Chris?
This isn't the worst Flair match we've done in this segment. It's better than the RVD match. This is like a prototypical. Isn't that a prototypical Flair house show match? It's like it's all selling. It's no big bumps other than maybe the one up the top. But then, like, I don't know. I didn't hate it. I think I scored it relatively high, but I think that's because I think that might be to do with just compared to what's around it. I enjoy, I think anything where Flair's at least interesting because he's a charismatic character. The crowd were actually somewhat into this because of the Ricky Dozen connection, which was good because basically we tried. Inoki built himself in career and stuff to try and get over. I do like that Inoki went over mostly because A is the closest thing to a Korean versus American story as you're getting on the show, and B, Inoki just never doesn't go over. He's a Japanese Hulk Hogan. You think Jeff? No, actually, he's Hulk Hogan before. Hulk Hogan went undefeated in a precursor to the G1 until he came across Inoki, and Inoki beat him twice. If you think Jeff Jarrett's nepotism is bad to fucking Inoki? But anyway, it was fine. It was a Flair house show match.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether I'd hyped it up for myself as, this dream match, or whether I was that tired by the end of this pay-per-view and that emotionally drained from having to watch Hashimoto fighting Scott Norton to a time limit draw that I wasn't feeling this at all. And again, you're right, the crowd was somewhat into this, but I still feel like I can only give it 5 stars. I don't feel like it can have anything more.
I gave it 6. I think that partly because of A, the show, and B, I'm sort of blinded by the fact that this is actually a dream match. No matter how you hack it, it's just wasn't a good dream. It's not a dream match that lived up to the hype.
Garth?
I'm happy to go with 5. I thought it was all right. I think the thing that, especially with this match, more than any of them, the thing that killed it is there's not even any promos or anything to sort of feed into the match.
To be fair, if I was in charge of Flair and Korea, I'd be like, shut up, keep your fucking mouth shut. Don't say anything.
The problem was that no Koreans spoke English, and at the end of the tour, Flair was asked for a few words, basically saying, that he was very sorry for America's actions and such, and he refused to say it and just said some very generic things. And then they just overdubbed it in Korean with what they wanted him to say in the first place because no one could understand English. So I think that was pretty much what they were going for, the promos, because there was no point because no one would understand them anyway. something that probably did contribute to the crowd being very, very quiet, aside from, the fact that they didn't know what the fuck was going on. Apparently, Ric Flair was sitting with one of the higher-ranking officials in the North Korean government, and during night one, and there was a match going on. I can't quite remember what match it was, and this official turns, and they have a conversation through a translator, and the conversation goes something like, why is that small man able to lift that big man with little to no effort? And then later on, it was like, how did that man get up from that move so quickly? And if that would...
I take him as the Hawk match.
Yeah, it was. That's what it was. But if that thought was shared around the rest of the 190,000 people, that this was billed as a real thing, like a real fighting competition, and everyone in the crowd's just going, that's fucking bullshit.
That's what fucking Inoki does, though. And Antonio Inoki literally saw strong style as a mixed martial art discipline. And so he'd start putting, like, a few years after this, he'd start putting his champions in with real MMA fighters, and if they lost, they'd get the belt taken off him. Like, he had, Hashimoto left New Japan because he hadn't, at Wrestle Kingdom, well, a precursor to Wrestle Kingdom, Inoki had an actual fucking judo fighter shoot on Hashimoto, who's just a wrestler. So Hashimoto just got fucking shot on, and it's like, because Inoki's a fucking crazy person. He probably did tell the North Koreans it was real, because he's fucking. Did, yeah. I don't care how much Bischoff denies it. Inoki's a fucking madman. Like, he'll do anything to get people into a building, it's not like people see him as like this great booker. He has some good ideas, but he also booked Nails versus Giant Gonzalez. So,
and let's not forget, he booked Hashimoto to fight Scott Norton to a time limit. Never ever forget that Hashimoto fought Scott Norton to a time limit draw. We've had to sit through that.
I'm pretty sure the length of Scott Norton's IWGP title reign is comparable to Kenny Omega's.
And that, in itself, is the most depressing thing that we've heard on this podcast. Thank fuck that is over. I can't begin to describe...
This is your fault, Rob.
This was my choice. I didn't think it'd fucking win.
I'm sure somebody... sent us a message or just sort of tweeted us and says, "Oh, you're in for a real treat, guys."
Was it? Who was it? I think it was Smark Out Mode. No, Smark and Friends. Smark and Friends.
You lied.
You did lie. If you're
lied.
listening to this podcast, you're a liar. You're an absolute liar. This was fucking dog.
You Canadian bastard.
Whoa.
Well, we don't condone Chris's voice. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that is, thank God, the end of Collision in Korea. Again, no other wrestling pay-per-views have taken place in Korea, and I think if we haven't already sort of explained why that is, why that's the case, then you clearly haven't been listening. I think we need to do a poll next time with shows that we actually enjoy, so that we can sort of give off, an air of positivity instead of shitting on every single match, which I feel like is what we've done today. But yeah, I apologise for that. It's a weird-ass show, but Collision in Korea is now in the archives. Get in. I don't have to talk about it ever again. Thank you so much for listening, guys. You can talk to us on Twitter, Facebook. You can download the podcast on all sorts of platforms. Everywhere you want to find your podcast, you can find us. Chris, if they want to abuse you on Twitter, where do they find you?
At Candy Chris 97. What do that? I never use that anymore. If I'm gonna tweet someone, I just tweet on the podcast account and annoy some right-wing snowflake.
And then get us fucking banned.
Right, fucking. It's not my fault.
Anyway, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Garth, where can they find you?
At Garth Armenia. Don't forget to check out the website for our universe.
That is true.
WWE 2K universe.
That is true. We've started our own WWE 2K universe mode with NXT's first takeover taking place on Saturday. Chris, do you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Oh, yes. Bret Hart doesn't win.
There you go.
Sorry,
Spoil. Jesus Christ, spoilers. And Garth.
How? Hang on a minute. How do you know? Not until Saturday.
Not until Saturday, guys. Not until Saturday.
It's a bit. It's
This shit's fixed, isn't it?
This isn't real.
Something's not quite right here.
Chris screwed Brett.
Right, fucking. He's getting a title program out of it. Okay.
Oh man, you've ruined it now. And Garth, talk to us about Backlash.
Backlash is probably the best pay-per-view since Vince McMahon died.
Isn't it the only pay-per-view since Vince McMahon died?
Exactly.
Love it. Is that literally the end of your... Okay, fair enough. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, Garth's pay-per-view is good. There you go. Thank you very much for listening, ladies and gentlemen. Join us next week where we'll be returning to our list format. Keep your eyes peeled on Twitter and Facebook for the announcement there and for the poll of our new Retro pay-per-view review. You can vote on what we have to endure next. Just make sure it's not as bad as this pay-per-view. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you guys again soon.
You've been listening to the PodMania Pro Wrestling Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at PodMania, Facebook at PodMania Podcasts, and YouTube and Instagram at Real PodMania. And check out the website podmania.co.uk. Until next time, wrestling fans.